A little girl, no older than 3, pointed across a crowded grocery store and said one word, "Mommy!" The whole aisle stopped. Then came the laughter. Not the warm, gentle kind, not the kind that comes from innocence or joy. This was the sharp, cutting kind, the kind that makes your face go hot and your chest go tight. The girl's father, Joel Sam, stood there, frozen. He was holding a box of cereal in one hand and his daughter Lucinda's small hand in the other. He looked down at her. Then he looked up at the faces staring back at him. Some people were covering their mouths, others were shaking their heads. A few just stared, waiting to see how he would react. Joel didn't move. He didn't get angry. He just took a long, slow breath. Because what those people didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand just from looking at him, was the real reason behind that one small word. And when he finally told them, nobody was laughing anymore. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Joel Sam was 34 years old. He lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where the heat kicked on too late in winter and the neighbors argued past midnight. The walls were thin, the carpet was old, but he kept it clean, he kept it warm, he did what he could. He worked as a mechanic at a shop about 20 minutes from home. He started his shift at 7 in the morning and tried his hardest to be done by 4 so he could pick Lucinda up from daycare before they charged extra for being late. He had been late 3 times that month alone. Lucinda was 3 years old. She had big brown eyes and a laugh that could fill a whole room. She loved dinosaurs, orange slices, and the cartoon about the little blue dog. She didn't fully understand what was happening in her life. She just knew that Daddy was always there. That part Joel made sure of. He hadn't always been a single dad. For the first year and a half of Lucinda's life, it had been the 3 of them, Joel, Lucinda, and Leah Sam, his wife. Leah had been sick for a long time before either of them really admitted it. She had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition 2 months before Lucinda was born. The doctors were cautious. They gave options, they gave timelines, but they couldn't give guarantees. Leah spent most of Lucinda's first year fighting. She held on long enough to hear her daughter laugh for the very first time, long enough to teach Joel how to do Lucinda's hair the way she liked it, long enough to tell him, one quiet evening when the baby was asleep, that she wasn't afraid. "I'm not afraid," she had said. "I just don't want her to forget me." Joel held her hand that night and told her that would never happen. He still meant every word. Leah passed away when Lucinda was 18 months old. Joel was 32, completely alone and more broken than he had ever been in his life. He had no roadmap for any of this. Nobody does. You don't prepare to raise a child alone after losing the person you built your whole world around. You just wake up the next morning and the morning after that, and you keep going because there is a little girl who needs breakfast and clean clothes and someone to hold her when she cries. So that's what Joel did, every single day. He didn't date, he didn't go out, he didn't talk about Leah to people who didn't already know her, not because he was ashamed, but because it was too heavy. Most people didn't know what to say, and most of the time, their silence hurt worse than their words. He carried it alone, but he never let it touch Lucinda. At night, after he put her to bed, he would sit on the edge of her mattress and tell her about her mom. He showed her photos on his phone. He talked about the way Leah laughed, the way she danced in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching, the way she smelled of lavender and always burned the toast. Lucinda didn't always understand the stories, but she listened, and sometimes she would point at the photo on his phone and whisper, "Pretty." Joel always agreed. "Yeah, baby," he'd say. "She was the most beautiful thing I ever saw, second only to you." Those were the quiet moments, the good ones. If you've ever had to hold yourself together for someone who needed you, even when you were falling apart on the inside, then you already know exactly what Joel's nights looked like. Take a moment and let me know in the comments what this story is bringing up for you so far. I read every single one. But life outside those four walls was a different thing altogether. People saw a young man alone with a little girl and made their own stories. Some were kind, many were not, and the weight of other people's judgment had become just another thing Joel carried wherever he went. He just didn't expect what happened that Saturday afternoon in aisle 7. It started as an ordinary day. Joel had the weekend off for the first time in 3 weeks. He didn't have big plans. He just wanted to do something normal with his daughter, something that felt like a regular Saturday. So he took Lucinda to the grocery store. She was in a great mood that morning. She wore her yellow raincoat even though it wasn't raining because she decided she liked how it looked. Joel let her wear it. It wasn't worth the argument, and honestly, it made him smile. They went up and down the aisles slowly. Lucinda pointed at everything. She asked questions about things she already knew the answers to. She wanted the sugar cereal. Joel pretended to think about it before saying no. She asked again. He said no again. She accepted it with more grace than most adults would. The laughter spread. Not everyone, but enough. Joel could feel every set of eyes on him. He could feel what they were thinking without a single word being said out loud. They thought he was some deadbeat dad who hadn't even taught his daughter what her own mother looked like. They thought it was funny. They thought it was sad, but in the wrong kind of way. They looked at him like he was a problem someone else had left unsolved. He looked down at Lucinda. She didn't understand what was happening. She was still pointing, still looking at the woman with the dark hair. Her little arms stretched out, her face open and soft, and completely unaware that she had just become the center of a stranger's joke. Joel felt something rise up in his chest. Not anger, something heavier. He had spent the last 18 months doing everything he could to hold his daughter's world together, getting up before the sun, coming home exhausted, talking about Leah every single night so Lucinda would know who her mother was, even though she was too young to fully hold on to any memory. And now he was standing in aisle 7, under the weight of strangers laughing at his daughter, at him, for something they didn't understand at all. The woman with the dark hair looked uncomfortable. She gave a small, awkward smile and started to walk away. The couple who had laughed first, still smiling. Joel stood very still. Lucinda tugged at his hand. "Daddy?" He looked down at her. "It's okay, baby," he said quietly. But it wasn't okay. Not because of what Lucinda had said. That was innocent. That was beautiful in its own painful way. It wasn't okay because of what the people around him had decided it meant, without ever stopping to ask. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts on this story so far in the comments below. What would you have done if you were standing right there in that aisle, watching this unfold? I read every single one. Joel looked up from his daughter, and he made a decision. He didn't work away. That was the first thing. Most people in that moment would have grabbed their child and left, kept their head down, avoided the whole thing. Joel had done that before, more times than he could count. He had swallowed hard moments in silence because it felt easier than being seen, than being misread even more. But something about this felt different. Maybe it was the look on that couple's face, the ease with which they laughed at something they didn't understand. Maybe it was the teenagers still whispering. Maybe it was the fact that his daughter was standing right there, innocent and small, and completely unaware that she had just become someone's joke. Whatever it was, Joel's feet didn't move toward the exit. They moved toward the couple. Not aggressively, not with raised hands or a raised voice. He didn't want a scene. He wasn't that kind of man. He walked calmly, with Lucinda still holding his hand, until he was standing about 2 feet from the man in the baseball cap and his wife. They looked up. "Something funny?" Joel said. His voice was flat, quiet, not cold, but firm. The man cleared his throat. "Hey man, we weren't trying to—" "I know, you weren't trying to. You just did." The woman looked at the floor. The man shifted his weight. Joel turned away. But now more people were watching. A woman with 2 kids had stopped her cart a few feet away. An older gentleman near the end of the aisle had gone still. A store employee peeked out from behind a product display, trying to figure out if she needed to step in. Joel stood in the middle of it all. Lucinda tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, snacks?" A few people chuckled softly, not mockingly this time, just at the pure innocence of a 3-year-old cutting through grown-up tension like it wasn't even there. But Joe barely heard it. He was somewhere else in his head. He was back in the hospital room where Leah had taken her last breath, back in the parking garage afterward, sitting alone in his car for over an hour because he didn't know how to drive home to a sleeping baby and explain where her mother had gone. Back on the floor of Lucinda's nursery at 3 in the morning, holding a stuffed rabbit, trying not to fall apart completely. All of that lived inside him, every day. And the world expected him to be fine, to be normal, to smile in a grocery store like he didn't have a past, like he wasn't carrying anything. He bent down to Lucinda's level. "You know who that lady reminded you of, don't you?" he asked softly. Lucinda looked at him with those big brown eyes and gave a slow nod. She touched her small hand to his chest, the same spot where he always pulled up the photos on his phone. "Mama?" she whispered. Joel's throat tightened. "Yeah, baby," he said. "Mama." He picked her up and held her against his shoulder. She rested her head right there in the crook of his neck, the way she always did. Her little yellow raincoat crinkled gently against his jacket. He straightened up. When he looked around, people were still watching, but the laughter had stopped. The couple hadn't walked away. The woman had her arms crossed, but something in her expression had shifted. She was listening now, waiting. Right here, right at this moment, I want you to think about something. Have you ever had to explain a pain that nobody around you could see? Joel is about to do exactly that. If this story is speaking to you, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm listening, just like this crowd was, finally, listening to Joel. He hadn't planned to say anything more. He wasn't looking for an audience. He wasn't trying to make a speech. He was just a tired father in a grocery store, holding his little girl. But the words came anyway. Her mom passed away 18 months ago. Lucinda was still a baby. She doesn't really remember her face, but I show her pictures every night, and she recognized the perfume. He said it simply, no drama, no breakdown, just the truth. The aisle went completely still. The couple, the woman with 2 kids, the older gentleman, the store employee still half hidden behind the display, all of them frozen. And then Lucinda lifted her head off Joel's shoulder and looked around at all the faces staring at her. She pointed at the couple and smiled. "Hi," she said. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, because that tiny 3-year-old in a yellow raincoat had just walked straight through every heavy adult emotion in that aisle like it wasn't even there. And what happened next, nobody saw coming. The woman standing beside the man in the baseball cap started crying first. It wasn't loud, it was just one tear that slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She pressed her fingers to her mouth and looked at Lucinda, then at Joel, and slowly shook her head. "I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry."
Her husband had gone pale. He reached out and briefly touched Joel's shoulder, just one hand on his jacket, just for a second. "I didn't know, man. I'm sorry." He nodded once. He didn't tell them it was okay, because it wasn't entirely, but he understood. People laugh at things they don't understand. It's a reflex. He had done it himself before, a long time ago, before life cracked him open and taught him to look twice before reacting. Then a voice came from behind him. "Excuse me." He turned. A woman was standing near the pasta sauce shelf. She had calm eyes and a steady presence, holding a small bunch of bananas like she had just been shopping and somehow found herself standing in the middle of something much bigger than groceries. Her name, she would learn later, was Sky. "I've been standing here since the beginning," Sky said, her voice soft but clear. "I just want to say you are doing an incredible job." Joel blinked. He wasn't sure he had heard her right. "You heard everything?" the woman from the couple asked. "Every word," Sky said quietly. She looked at Joel. "You're raising your daughter to know her mother, through pictures, through stories, through perfume." She paused. "That is love. That is real, lasting love."
Lucinda was watching Sky with wide, curious eyes. Sky bent down slightly and smiled at her. "Hi there." "Hi," Lucinda said, then completely on her own. "My mama is pretty." Sky's smile went soft. "I bet she is, sweetheart." She straightened up and looked at Joel one more time. "You shouldn't have been laughed at today. I'm sorry it happened. And whoever Leah was, she chose a good man." Joel didn't respond right away. He couldn't. He just stood there in aisle 7 with his daughter on his hip and let those words land. He had walked into that store carrying the same invisible weight he always carried: grief, loneliness, the exhaustion of doing it all by himself while the world either ignored him or got it wrong. He had never expected anything different. But Sky's words did something to that weight. They didn't erase it. They just made it feel less invisible. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me, what part of Joel and Lucinda's story hit you the hardest? Was it the moment she called the stranger Mommy? Was it what Sky said? Was it Joel finally speaking his truth out loud? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know. "Thank you," Joel said. His voice was quiet, a little rough at the edges. "That means more than you know." Sky smiled at Lucinda one last time, then she turned and calmly walked back to her cart. And just like that, the crowd slowly dissolved. People returned to their groceries. The aisle went back to ordinary. But Joel didn't feel ordinary. He felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time: seen. Joel finished the shopping. He got the pasta sauce, the same kind Leah always used to buy. He got Lucinda her juice boxes. He even let her place a small bag of animal crackers in the cart. She held it the entire walk to the checkout like it was something precious. In the parking lot, he buckled her into her car seat and stood outside the car for a moment before getting in. He looked up at the gray afternoon sky, the kind of sky that doesn't ask anything of you, just sits there, quiet and wide. He thought about Leah. He thought about the way she would have handled that moment in aisle 7. She always moved through difficult things with a calm he had never fully understood. She used to say that peace wasn't about having an easy life. It was about choosing not to let the hard moments take something from you that they didn't deserve. He missed her. He always would. But something had changed in him that afternoon. For so long, Joel had carried a quiet fear, the fear that he was failing, that he wasn't enough, that Lucinda was growing up missing something essential, and that every day was just him barely holding everything together. He never said it out loud. He just lived inside it every single night. But Lucinda had pointed at a stranger because of a smell,
a perfume. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because Joel had been telling her every single night, showing her photos, describing Leah with words a toddler could feel, even if she couldn't fully understand. That small moment in aisle 7 wasn't embarrassing. It was proof. Proof that Leah was still alive inside their home, still present in Lucinda's heart, even without a clear memory to hold on to. Joel did that. Joel drove home, made dinner, gave Lucinda a bath, and put her to bed. And that night, like every other night, he sat on the edge of her mattress and pulled out his phone. He scrolled to Leah's photos. Lucinda pointed at the screen. "Pretty." "Yeah, she is." "She loves me?" she asked. It was a new question. She had never asked it quite like that before. Joel felt something move deep in his chest. "More than anything in this world," he said, "and she still does. That kind of love doesn't stop." Lucinda looked at the photo for a long, quiet moment. Then she looked up at her father. "You love me too, Daddy?" "Every single second," he said. She smiled. She closed her eyes. Joel sat in the dark long after she fell asleep, listening to her breathe, thinking about Sky's words.
Whoever Leah was, she chose a good man. He didn't feel like a good man most days. He felt like a man just trying to survive. But maybe, he thought, maybe that's exactly what a good man looks like from the inside. Messy, tired, doing it anyway. He kissed Lucinda's forehead. He turned off the lamp, and for the first time in a very long time, he slept through the night. Joel Sam didn't do anything extraordinary that Saturday. He went to the grocery store, he held his daughter's hand, he told the truth when it mattered. And something changed, not just for him, but for every single person who was standing in that aisle. That couple who laughed, they walked out of that store different. You could see it in the way they went quiet. Not broken, not shamed, just still. The kind of still that happens when a small moment forces you to look at the world a little more carefully than you did before. Sky went home and probably didn't think of herself as anything special. She just said what she saw. But for Joel, a man who had been carrying invisible grief for nearly 2 years, those words were everything. And Lucinda? She just wanted her animal crackers, but she carried something into that store that she didn't even know she had. She carried her mother in a smell, in a reflex, in a pointed finger and one small word. And that is the story of what grief looks like inside a home where love never left. It doesn't always look like tears. It doesn't always look like broken pieces on the floor. Sometimes it looks like a little girl in a yellow raincoat calling a stranger Mommy because her father loved her mother enough to keep her alive in every story, every photo, every quiet bedtime moment. That's what Joel did. That's what so many single parents do every single day, without applause, without recognition, without anyone ever stopping them in a grocery store to say, "You are doing an incredible job." But you are. If you are walking this road right now, if you are raising a child alone, doing it through grief or loss or circumstances you never chose, this story was for you. Joel's story is your story. The details may be different, but the love, that part is the same. And love, even when it's tired, even when it's grieving, even when it's standing in aisle 7 being laughed at by strangers, love finds a way. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button right now. It costs nothing, and it helps more people who need this find their way here.
If you are a single parent, whether you are raising your child through loss, through hardship, through a life that didn't go the way you planned, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are. Tell me what you are carrying. This community right here on the Redeemed Single Dad was built for exactly this moment. And before you go, I want to say this directly to you. If you made it all the way to the end of Joel and Lucinda's story, it is because something in it found you. Maybe you needed to hear that love outlasts loss. Maybe you needed to see that a quiet, tired, ordinary father can be exactly enough. Whatever brought you here, thank you. Leave a comment and tell me what this story meant to you. Your words matter to someone else who is reading them right now. If you are new here, welcome. The Redeemed Single Dad is a place for real stories, real struggle, real hope. Stories about people who are quietly doing the hardest thing there is, raising a child with everything they have, even when everything feels like it's not enough. Subscribe and stay with us. There are so many more stories to tell, and every single one of them matters.